Hi everyone, I'm here to give my review of The Boys in the Boat, which was the AG Book Club selection for April. Um, and I, uh, I also just want to say that this month I kind of experienced one of my very favorite things about book club, and that's that it kind of forces you to read. So my month was so busy, so crazy, and The Boys in the Boat was a really long book. But because I had book club at my house, I knew I had to read this book. And so it just made me prioritize reading so that I literally had this excuse to say, like, sorry, I can't do that because I have to read. Which is basically like my fantasy at any given time. But like I think I wouldn't have read very much this week if it hadn't been for book club forcing me to do that. So, the reason why I started book club a year and a half ago was that I just wanted to read more, and I knew that if I was doing it with other people, then I would actually do it. So all that to say, I really appreciated that book club forced me to read this really awesome book this month when I probably wouldn't have done it otherwise. And I know that this was true for other women too. Like one woman said she finished the book like at 4:45 in the morning because her daughter had woken up and she knew she had to read for book club, and so she just read for 2 hours before the rest of her family woke up. Another woman was like reading it at the gym on the treadmill, and it's just you just make it happen. And of course, there's months when you really can't. There are other things that are more important than reading, and so you don't. But for those of us who did, it was just kind of a fun experience. And the book was amazing. So I honestly didn't know what to expect. I just knew everyone had loved it when it came out a couple years ago, and but whenever I read the synopsis and stuff, I was just like, what's the big deal about rowing? I mean, on the front cover it says they win the gold at Berlin, so that's like the end of the book. So why will I be interested? And it was so interesting. I was telling Logan that when you first start off, there's so many details, and it's just kind of slow going, and within a couple of chapters the pace picks up, it gets more interesting, it gets more exciting, and by the last 100 pages I was just like tearing through the book. My heart rate was up. It was so exciting. And I mean, I think every single person that I've talked to who's read this tears up at the end, at the climax, because it's so beautiful, so joyful. It's really a wonderful experience to read this book. And my two favorite things about it were, one of them was just getting to know the sport of rowing. I didn't know anything about crew before picking up this book. I just kind of knew that it was a boring sport to watch because, I'd watched it twice and I thought it was boring or something. But learning how physically grueling it is, how old the sport is, and all of the historic significance of the sport, and I really enjoy that part of it, even learning about how popular the sport was back in the 30s and prior to that. So those things were really interesting, and just kind of following along this one team through their 4 years of training and seeing what it takes to actually be the world's best crew, that it's more than just even physical prowess. It takes guts, it takes perseverance, it takes kindness and trust, these things that you don't ordinarily think of as being related to sports. So that was just really interesting to me, totally captivating. I loved it. And then the second thing that I liked most about it was actually, and this is probably very specific to me, maybe other people felt this way too, but there's a man that it talks about in this book named George Pocock. I think that's how you pronounce his name. And he is a shell builder. He builds the boats that the men row in the crew races, and he is just a very special man. He is just the son of a boat builder in London, but he just kind of decided early on that he was going to master the craft of building shells. And I mean, it didn't take long. Somewhere between his 30s and 40s, he was the world's best shell builder. And he did it with this beautiful attention to detail. He's sort of a poet. He thinks of rowing almost like a religion or something, and he and the things that come out of his mouth are just so beautiful and poetic, and he relates it to like things that you just need to know in life. So he thinks that, you know, you can learn everything you need to learn about life from rowing, and by the end of the book you kind of think so too. But you know, he's a real man. This man lived. He, you know, died in the 70s, and he wrote extensively about rowing, and he was just a really interesting character. And he was fascinating to me, and I loved everything that I learned about him, and also his influence on the men of the racing crew at Washington. Was, you know, his influence was really big, and I loved hearing how he kind of like shaped the lives of these young men. So those are my two favorite things. And next month's book is called Maus, M-A-U-S. It is a graphic novel, and I think it will be kind of a fitting read for us because it is about the Holocaust. So The Boys in the Boat, it tells a story that kind of leads up to the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. But you know, they didn't know what was about to happen in Germany, and so the book Maus will kind of tell the tale of some Jews living in Europe at the time. And it's a true story, but it's told as if all of the people in Europe were mice and I think cats. So I think the Nazis are cats and everyone else are mice, and it's one of the greatest graphic novels ever written, I guess. That's sort of what people say about it, so I'm really looking forward to reading that with you. It'll be a quick read. Most graphic novels are, so go ahead and snatch yourself up a copy, and I will see you next month. Oh, and I'm doing this video outside because it was the closest I could get to Seattle weather. It's kind of rainy and gloomy and cold out here. So it reminded me of the weather in Seattle that you read about in The Boys in the Boat all the time. Anyways, have a great day, happy April, and I'll see you next month.